Welcome to another episode of the Washington Retirement Planning Podcast. I'm your host, Ethan Meikle. On this podcast, we specialize in helping people who work for Washington State get better understanding of how their confusing pension system works and all the benefits that go with it, and just give it to you guys in a way that will make you more confident in the benefits you have and empower you guys to retire early and help you guys pay less in taxes. Today, we're talking about ways to pay for healthcare if you're planning to retire early. It's one of the biggest reasons why people don't retire early or are scared to retire early or delay their retirement longer than they really should is because they're scared of healthcare costs. When we're working and our employer covers most of the healthcare costs for us, it keeps our costs quite low. When we have to absorb the entire cost on our own, it can be quite a shock. A couple can easily pay up to $1,500 per month for funding healthcare on their own. Now, of course, that depends on your health, what plan you want, and things like that. But it's still a pretty big cost, and it is a reason for concern. But if you plan accordingly and know your options, it's not something that you really need to worry about too much. After we're done covering that topic, the listener question of the day is something I've been getting a lot lately. So I get a lot of these comments on the YouTube channel, but for the most part, it's when can I retire with full benefits under, and then they name their pension plan, PERS 2, TRS 2, things like that. So I'm going to cover a few different pension systems, but when can I actually get my full benefits? Because it is different depending on how many years of service you had, when you got hired. That also determines when they consider you eligible for full retirement benefits. And then I'll talk a little bit about why the full retirement benefits isn't as big of a deal as people make it out to be. All right, so without further ado, let's just dive right into today's episode. So when we're looking at healthcare for early retirement, before we look at how to pay, one of the biggest questions we're looking at is what our options are. You need to understand what your options are to get a better idea of what the cost is actually going to be, because it can be quite different depending on what method you go with. Now, for those lucky enough to have a spouse that is still working, oftentimes you can just switch and get onto their health plan. When you lose your healthcare coverage, it is a qualifying event to then enroll into their retirement plan. Oftentimes, that's the cheapest way to go if you have that luxury. Now, if you don't have that luxury because they're either retired or you're single, then you're going to be on your own. So one option that a lot of people jump to without even thinking twice about it, and it's a mistake I made as well, is going into the Cobra plan. So Cobra basically lets you continue your current coverage for up to 18 months after you leave. A lot of people jump into this because they really don't know what their options are, and they haven't done their research, and that was my case as well. When I left working with AXA Advisors, now known as Equitable, and right before I was building Scenic Financial out, I actually got into Cobra because I thought that was my only option. I didn't really have time to research it because at the time, the twins are 2 years old. We're in the middle of buying our house, and for a period of time, our old house sold and a new one didn't close yet, so we're actually living with my mother-in-law for a little bit, and then the firm. I didn't have time to research it all. So I ended up paying a lot more than I needed to because I understand there was cheaper options. I didn't do necessary research. If you're considering Cobra, look at the cost, and then I want you to look at what you could get through the Washington Health Exchange and what you can get through the Public Employees Benefits Board, or the PEBB system, and we'll go into that in a little bit. But Cobra is not your only option. It is one of the simpler ones to get on, but it can be quite expensive and more expensive than people will realize. So with Cobra benefits, you're essentially taking on the full responsibility of the current health system that you're on. Now, depending on the plan and what the rates of the Cobra are, they can be a bit higher than what PEBB may charge you for also taking on the full responsibility of it. Now, Cobra does have its perks. It's really there when people need it. If they're in between jobs, if they got laid off, that's usually when Cobra comes into play, if they're not eligible for anything else. Now, in your guys' case, if you are choosing to retire early, while Cobra is an option, it may not be the best option, right? So if you're a state employee choosing to retire early in separate service, you actually become eligible for the PEBB medical benefit plan. Now, your employer has to be a member of the PEBB system, so not everybody is. I have a few clients that work for an employer that didn't pay in Social Security. Even though they had pensions from the state, they're members of PERS, they were not members of the PEBB system, so they actually couldn't use the PEBB retirement plan. So it doesn't actually cover all state employees, surprisingly. But if you do have PEBB as an option, it is something that you really want to consider doing. Yes, the costs are going to be higher because, again, the employer is not paying for any of it. You're totally funding this out of pocket, but it could be cheaper than using the Cobra benefits. PEBB offers coverage both to you, your spouse, and your children, and they have many different providers in them. Now, some of these providers may be limited by the county that you live in, and they may change from time to time. So earlier today, I actually got a call from one of my clients who told me that Kaiser is being dropped in Yakima County, so you have to switch to a different provider. So they can switch on you. But once you're in the PEBB system, the nice thing with it is, for the most part, the premiums, while they are higher, they don't fluctuate in a crazy amount. So you're not going to expect to see your premiums double. They keep it pretty competitive. So not one plan goes up a lot higher or faster than the other ones. In the private market, you really don't have the type of protection on it. Or the PEB is public employees. So you have to be a member of the public. So you have to be a state employee to actually be eligible for this. It's not for everybody. So me, I'm not a state employee. I can't get in the PEB system, right? Only for state employees. Now, the important thing with PEB is they actually do have a deadline, and that is 60 days after your loss of coverage or when you stopped working or declared your retirement. So if you're going to declare retirement for July 1st, you have until basically the end of August to get that application turned in, regardless if you are taking coverage from them or not. One of the biggest mistakes people can make is saying, hey, I'm on my spouse's coverage, or I found a cheaper plan elsewhere. I don't need the PEB coverage, and they never turn in their PEB application. The reason why you want to turn it in, because if you look on there, they'll give you an option to defer coverage. It's saying, hey, I have coverage elsewhere, but can you keep my eligibility for the future? So as long as you turn that in with that box checked, 3, 4, 10 years down the road, you come back to them saying, hey, I'd like to get coverage through you guys again. And then now you're eligible. Once that 60 days passes up and you did not turn the application in, the offer is off the table. You can never get back into the PEB system. So if you always want to keep your options open, at the very least, you need to turn in the application to preserve your eligibility. The next thing to know about the PEB system is they actually have two different parts. They have PEB for what I call pre-65, and they have PEB for post-65. And the reason why that is once you become eligible for Medicare, PEB actually becomes their second to pay option, or like a supplemental benefit plan. Therefore, while the coverages are going to remain similar, they're the second to pay option, and they're going to charge you less for them. So you're going to see a decrease in your premiums once you're 65. For a couple, they actually have a split rate option too, where if one of you is 65 and the other one is not 65 yet, you kind of meet in the middle. So if it was like $1,500 per month for two people prior to turning 65, when one of you turns 65, you may see that coverage drop to $1,200 a month or $1,000 per month, something like that. And then when that second spouse turns 65, it may come down to $900, $800, something like that. So it does decrease as you guys hit 65. Now, a recent change that got made to the PEB system in January of 2024 is they now allow people on the Plan 2 retirement system to start collecting or start being eligible for PEB benefits, even if they're not collecting their state pension plan. So prior to 2024, only Plan 3 members could choose to get onto the PEB system for retirement while deferring their pension, like not collecting their pension. So if you were on Plan 3, let's say at age 60, you could get PEB for your health insurance, and you can say, I'm not going to take my pension yet. I'll wait till 62 or 65 on Plan 3. Plan 2 before, in that same scenario, this is, again, prior to 2024, and that same person at 60, if they wanted the PEB medical system, they would be forced, or they would have to first turn on their pension, start collecting the benefits, take all the penalties before they're even eligible for the PEB retirement system. So that rule change is now gone. So they're both even now. So nobody's being forced to take their pension when they don't want to. And so it means everybody's allowed to enroll in PEB without even collecting your pension first. So that's a really big change that really helps people in the Plan 2 system out. Now, your other options outside of this, so if we don't have a spouse's insurance to get onto, we don't want to pay the Cobra, or say Cobra expired, you've been on for 18 months, thanks for kicking you off. If you're not going in PEB because you think it costs too much, or maybe you're not covered by it, then your last line of defense is just straight up buying the insurance directly. So the easiest way I've known to do that is just go through the Washington Health Plan Finder. That way they're going to match you up with different insurance providers in the state. So it gives you kind of a centralized location to shop around for health plans, where you can go through all the different details of them all, look at the different plan options, price points, things like that. So it's kind of a centralized shop. That's where I went to get health insurance before getting into my spouse's plan. And it's open pretty much for anyone that doesn't have healthcare. You go and shop around on there. So my clients that work for the same employees but weren't PEB members went through there for their healthcare coverages. Now, one important thing to know before you dive into this is they're going to ask you questions, and some of it's going to be about your income. And what they're trying to calculate behind the scenes, without really directly telling you, is if you're eligible for tax credit, right? So they give tax credits when you fall under certain income thresholds to help offset the cost of these medical plans. However, if you understate it, or let's say you end up making more money than you originally told them in their estimates, or you took a distribution from Plan 3, which again increases your taxable income, at the end of the road, when you go to file your taxes, if you end up making too much money and you took the credit along the way, so you took a credit you weren't eligible for, you're going to be forced to pay that back come tax time. So case in point, we had a client just last year who was on the Washington Health Plan system. They were getting their credit, and we strategically said, hey, we're not going to do Roth conversions this year because that would push their income up Anytime you do Roth conversions, you're going to pay more in taxes, and that would, force them to pay back the credit they've been accumulating along the way. So we skipped Roth conversions. At that time, without us knowing really, the client actually was taking money out of a retirement account, then IRA, to fund, I believe it was like a kitchen remodel or something like that. So they were fixing up their house. They took money out of a small IRA that we weren't managing it. And they didn't really disclose it to us where the money came from. Therefore, we didn't know that they were doing this. So when it came time to file their taxes, they got a surprise tax bill of about $4,000 that they had owed back. And that was the credit that they had to repay because they earned too much money. And yes, taking money out of your IRAs, again, counts as earned income. So you got to be careful with that. So the easiest way to avoid it, and this is what I tell people now, is when you go into Washington Health Plan Finder, they'll give you the option actually, like if you want to have the credits applied or not. It's best to say no, don't apply credits. Pay the full cost as you go. Yes, it is expensive. At the end of the road, if you are eligible, you'll get it back come tax time. It's a refundable tax credit. If you weren't eligible for it, they're not going to be hit with any kind of payback thing, right? So there's no surprise come tax time. So it's paid along the way. If I'm eligible, I get it back. If I'm not, then everything is squared away. So that's what I would recommend, because I also got caught with that as well. A business owner is a little bit hard to predict income for the year. I made more than I thought I was going to, and then I got hit with having to pay back some of that tax credit when I filed my taxes that year. All right, so that's really the only other option. So those are your options for where to get coverage from. Now, for early retirement, again, that's until you get up to 65. Once you're 65, you can get onto Medicare if you'd like. If you're still covered by your spouse's insurance, we have some people that will keep deferring their coverage. There's no penalty for getting into Medicare after 65 if you're covered by a health plan, whether it's your employer or your spouse's employer. You only get penalized if you were enrolled after 65 and you were not covered during that time. Then they hit you with the penalty. But for most people, as long as you are covered, you can file at 65 or later. And Medicare will cover most things, but not everything. So some plans are still good. PEB is what probably 90% of our clients have for that reason. And the only ones that don't have PEB are ones that aren't eligible. They were not state employees, or their employer didn't pay into the PEB system, weren't members of it. Then they have to go to the Washington Health Exchange. But if you're eligible for PEB, it's usually a pretty good option. Even though it can seem kind of expensive, when you get past the nickel and diming of deductibles and copays and will they pay this, what is covered, PEB doesn't mess around. They cover most things. And I hear a lot of clients every single year state, how good the insurance is, how much they didn't have to pay, how much things got covered. So PEB will cover you guys. And yes, it's not cheap, but if you're looking for coverage at the end of the day, it's going to be hard to beat what they're offering. Now, how do we pay for this all? So paying for healthcare, while it's not fun, is something that it's one of those necessary evils that I have to do. So if we're going to start early, you just kind of have to sit with that, have to pay for it. So how do we do it? Option one is you can continue to work. Now, I'm not saying keep working, don't retire. If we're retired. But some people, retirements are different than others. Some people want to retire from their teaching job, or they're just done their current role with the state. And maybe they want to take on a different role. So they want to go and become a substitute teacher. That way they can kind of pick and choose their schedule, pick the area they work in, pick what days they want to work, travel on their own. There's no lesson plans. Some people like that. And if all you're trying to make up is, $800 a month, and the sub, let's say they're paying $150, $200 a day, it only takes a few days of the month to come up with the cash. And especially if you don't need to make up all of it, then you don't have to work as many days. If you know you're going to go on vacation next month, maybe work a little bit more that month and then take that month off just to account for the cash that you need to have for healthcare there the following month. So working part-time is an option. Another thing you can do is work for an employer that does offer healthcare coverage to part-time employees. So places like Starbucks, I believe Walmart, Home Depot was on the list I saw. There's a few of them out there that do not require you to be a full-time employee to still be eligible for healthcare benefits. So that way you could have a part-time job, you get a little income, keeps you busy, and they give you healthcare. You probably still have to pay for the healthcare, but it's probably still going to be cheaper than the PEB system. And again, this isn't the long-term thing. This is a bridging strategy that people will use just until they get closer to 65, right? Or if they're just trying to close the gap a little bit before they can feel confident in funding it the rest of the way. So part-time work is something you can do. Some people actually will go ahead and start their own businesses after they've left, and they'll use income from that line of work to cover the costs of the healthcare plan. Now, for those of you that are trying to retire without any kind of work, we're done. We don't plan on subbing. We don't want to start our own business. We don't want to work anywhere. We just want to be done. And at the end of the day, you just have to pay it out of your own pocket. So this is where you can take the distributions from your retirement account. So this is why when we always meet with people to do projections, we always want to add healthcare costs in there. So clients will come to us and say, hey, we need $8,000 a month for retirement because we're currently spending, but they're not calculating the healthcare increase that they're going to need. So when you say, hey, I need $8,000 a month, you probably need closer to $9,000. And again, that's post-tax. So once you add taxes to it, you probably need closer to about $12,000 pre-tax income. Now, again, remember that this is a short-term need. It doesn't mean you have to be generating $12,000 a month to cover that or come up with the entire $1,000 every single month. We're only doing it from the time you retire until Medicare kicks on and the cost will shrink. So it's a short-term thing we're pulling from. The surefire way to do this, and it's the strategy we use the most, is we figure out how much money the clients need per month, including their healthcare costs. We take 2 years of that income and we put it into a cash account, like a money market. So a client comes to us and says, hey, I need, $8,000 a month. We say, okay, it's probably, $9,000 with healthcare, pre-tax, and if all their money's pre-tax, which most term income is because pension, Social Security are all pre-tax, we always push it up to pre-tax. Let's say they need $12,000, per month, right? $12,000 per month, which means you need about $144,000, per year. Then we back off all of their guaranteed income sources. So if we need $12,000 a month, and we have, let's say it's $3,000 from the pension, $2,000 from Social Security, $2,000 from the spouse Social Security. Great. We already have $7,000 of that already covered. Now we're only short by about $5,000 or so. So you take that $5,000 over a year, it's only about $60,000 per year. So $60,000 is 1 year income, double it, it's $120,000. We have about $120,000 of our funds sitting in that money market account. That way it's going to cover our monthly bills for at least 2 years of retirement without any fluctuation in the markets, including our healthcare costs. If you need more than 2 years, then I probably wouldn't put more than 2 years in cash just because you are losing to inflation. Then that's when usually like some type of bond fund would maybe come into place. That way you can earn at least a little bit of interest, hopefully. It shouldn't shake too much. And then you're going to have a few more years in that bucket. Really what I'm getting at is if you just carve out what you need ahead of time and stick it in the account, then you know what you have, what you need. All right. Another way you could do it is you said, hey, healthcare is going to cost $18,000 or $20,000 per year. Some clients will actually take that $20,000 and say they needed 3 years of it. So they'd take about $60,000 and they'd put their own account. So they have like a healthcare account, or they'll just have $60,000 into some type of money market on its own, or some type of safer, ETF fund. So they're basically carving out what they need for that, and they put it into that particular fund, and they draw from that for their healthcare needs. So they're carving out their portfolio. And while it may scare people to see their account go down, especially early retirement, because you're probably taking out more than it's growing, but the thing is to know is that it's not permanent. At some point, it's going to go decrease. And the key point is when the healthcare cost decreases, if at that point we're able to cover all of our expenses pretty easily through investment withdrawals, Social Security, pensions, or anything like that, or rental income, and you cover our income sources, then we're good to go. If it's still a struggle at that point, then early retirement may not be the best bet for you. Now, one other consideration is using VEBA funds to help cover healthcare. That's probably the most common ways we see people use their VEBA funds. So VEBA is a voluntary employees benefits account. It's basically like an HRA. So you guys may be familiar with HSA's health savings account. An HRA is a health reimbursement account. The distinction there is you cannot save into it. So you cannot add your own money into it. You have to, for the most part, the funds that go into there is going to be transfers from your unused sick leave. So when it comes time to retire, you have all your sick leave. You have the option, hey, do you want to cash it out and pay taxes, or do you want to move it into the VEBA? Now, cash out, they only give you a quarter of the dollar. So you get basically 1 out of every 4 days, paid out to you and pay taxes on it. Or it's the same exchange, but you could avoid the taxes by putting it into this VEBA account. Now, depending on how many unused sick leave you have, this can be quite a large amount. It can be upwards of, $30,000. We've seen them $50,000, $60,000, which will cover people for anywhere from 18 months to 2 years, depending on the plan, and if it's in a couple or just a single person. But the VEBA accounts can get quite large just from that cash out alone. And now remember, the nice thing with the VEBA account, you get the money, you avoid paying the taxes, you actually get more in your pocket. As long as you use it for medical expenses, then it stays tax-free. So really, if someone gives you the buyout option of, hey, do you want $60,000 gross, and then we're going to take $10,000 for taxes, or do you want $60,000 to go into your VEBA? It's smarter to put in the VEBA account because you get to save the taxes and then use it for your healthcare, which we know is going to go there eventually anyways. All right, so those are the different ways to pay for it. So you're either working to make the money up, you're just going to pulling out of your retirement portfolio, or you're using the funds from the VEBA to pay for it. That way you can kind of keep your portfolio intact, combination of the three or two of them can also work well. But knowing your options and actually putting the numbers on paper usually helps people get things clarified, and it's a lot less scary than people think. And then over the past few years, the amount of people that we help retire early, just by showing them certain strategies and how things actually look on paper, really opens their eyes and gives them that courage and motivation to actually leave early. Currently, most of our planning clients are leaving about 2.5 years sooner than they otherwise would have planned for. So we are basically adding about 930 days, to the retirement. So 930 days extra, they get to choose to do what they want to do. So a question that got submitted to us by a lot of people is, one can retire with the full benefits under the PERS 2 system. So I'll cover both 2 and 3. So for the most part, they're going to be the same. There's no distinction between PERS, TRS, SERS, 2 or 3. I always talk about them, all together because they have, for the most part, the same rules. It's the same retirement benefits, the same retirement formulas. There isn't a clear distinction between them. It's really just who your employer is. Your contribution rates on the Plan 2 side may be different, but other than that, a lot of the inner workings of them are going to be very similar. So full retirement benefits for Plan 2 and Plan 3 are the exact same. Now for full retirement benefits, when they say full, it's the age you can collect it without taking a penalty. It's age 62, as long as you have 30 years of service and you were hired and started putting money into the pension system prior to May 1st of 2013. So if you're hired before May 1st of 2013 and you have 3 years of service credits, you're eligible to take in full at age 62. Now, for those of us that have less than 30 years of service credits, or we were hired after May 1st of 2013, our full retirement benefits are at age 65. So for the new folks or people that got started a little bit later, 65 is considered the full retirement age. So the age you can collect without receiving any type of penalty or reduction to your benefits. Now, one of the biggest errors that a lot of people think, and it sees all the time, is they will work longer than they really should because they don't want to take a penalty. They don't take the reduction because penalties are put in our mind as bad. We don't want to have anything less because they penalize me. But in the same breath, they'll say that they plan to take their Social Security at age 62 without realizing that Social Security does the exact same thing. When they say, hey, this is your full retirement age is age 67, that's your full Social Security. It's the amount you get without any reductions. Taking it at 62, they show that lesser amount and they show it as an option. They never state that it is a 30% or near 30% reduction in your benefits, or they never list it as a penalty. So a lot of people have in their minds where, hey, I have to work till 65 or have to work till 62 because I want to take a penalty, but then they turn around and take a 30% penalty from Social Security without thinking twice about it. Now, depending on how close to retirement and if you were, have to go 65 or if you're eligible for 62, the reductions may not be as scary as you think. I've covered this multiple times, but when you have 30 years of service, they only charge you a 2% penalty to go 1 year early and an extra 3% to go a year before that. So it's a 5% penalty to go at age 60, right? And that's a lot better than taking a 30% reduction to collect your Social Security at age 62. So you're going to take something early, it's usually better off taking the pension. Now, yesterday, I actually met with 2 people who were planning to retire early, but both of them did not have 30 years of service credits, and they were in their early 60s. So for both those meetings, we had to try to calculate if it was worth them taking a penalty, collecting their benefits right now, even if they don't have 30 years of service credits. Now, if you don't have 30 years of service credits, the difference is they actually hit you pretty hard with the reductions. It's about 9% per year, it's really just under 10. So it's something like you only get like 90% of your benefit if you go 1 year early. It's like 81 and change at year 2 and things like that. So in this case, we had one person thinking of going about 3 years early and one about 4. So they're getting between 30 to 25% reduction from going at this time. Now, a lot of people look at that and say, oh, no, thanks, and just turn around. And then that was my first gut reaction. Normally, when I'm doing early retirement benefits, it's people with 30 years. So the math is a lot easier when the penalty is only 5% and not 25%. But we dove into it. And in both cases, I gave these individuals a green light to go ahead and take it early and just bite the bullet on the 30 to 25% deduction. The reason being, you only live once. There's health complications in both matters. Second, when you do the math on how much I'm actually going to get from the system by taking it early, even with the reduction, it really just works out. So one of these people was Plan 2, one was Plan 3. So I worked with both systems when I did this. So even though you are taking that reduction, you'll get to collect that benefit early, right? So for example, I had one person that was on Plan 2, 20 years of service credits. We figured his monthly benefit was going to be about $2,400. So we met with one individual who was Plan 2. His benefit estimate from the state after taking the penalty was about $2,400. Without the penalty, it was closer to about $3,200 or so. So he was taking about $800 per month reduction for life, which is about $7,000 less, which sounds big on the surface. But if you do the math on it, even though we're getting less, we're also going to get it 3 full years early. So before he even got till that 65 age, that person would have banked about $86,000, right? That's in their pocket taken from the system. So even though they got less, even though they're getting less, they've already pulled $86,000 more than the person that waited till age 65. Now, the person that would have waited age 65, well, they wouldn't have taken a penalty, and now they have more benefits. It's going to take them a while to catch back up. How long will it take you to make up that deficit, right? If you're trying to just do total, how much total wealth can I get from the state? So that's when I say break even, that's what we look at, is how long would it take? And in both cases, it was about 15 years or so before it caught up. Right, so if I waited to 65, it wasn't until age 80 before I started technically getting more money out of the system in total from the state. Some people don't plan on living past 80. Some people just want to enjoy the money now, and others bite the bullet and take it. Now, that 15-year figure is worst case scenario. That's assuming no cost of living adjustments. Because remember, as soon as you start taking the pension, as long as you are taking it before July 1st, you become eligible for the cost of living adjustment the second year. So you only have that full penalty technically for 1 year. Year 2, you're going to get some type of cost of living adjustment, hopefully. If it's a 3% benefit, it's going to creep into it. So you're not taking as big of a penalty anymore. And that is always going to compound on itself. So by the time you get to, at 65, the reduction, instead of being $100 a month shy, it's probably closer to $700 or so. So it's not as big a reduction. And what it does is it pushes the break-even age from age 80 to often past 85 or well into the 90s, and sometimes as well. So just because they say there's an early penalty or you don't have 30 years of service does not mean you can't take it early or it doesn't make financial sense. As long as the numbers after all the penalties are still able to meet your living needs and cover your expenses, and I don't see any reason why you would delay your retirement. At the end of the day, you got one life to live. You don't know what tomorrow brings. If you can make it work now, then do it. There's always going to be the case to work from here, wait, and you're giving up your really good years. Your early retirement years are your best years. And waiting longer for more financial security, well, in some cases, it's maybe necessary. Oftentimes, I always encourage people to retire early. Studies will show that people, when they retire early, have less stress, will actually live longer or have happier lives. So I'm always going to be the advocate. When I see in the client's best interest to retire early and that's what they want, we're going to do everything in our power to try to make it work. And again, if it doesn't work, I'm going to be the first to tell them that it ain't going to happen. When I do the financial plans, I try every way to break it. I increase inflation in different ways. I run investment returns at 0%, very low percentages. We do all of the different, what if the market crashes at this time? So we try every way to break someone's retirement plan. So when we give someone the green light, they can feel pretty confident that it's going to be pretty successful and it's going to take something extraordinary to throw us off. And even in that case, for many state employees, as long as the guaranteed income is there ain't much that can really happen to really derail someone's retirement unless they're spending way above their means. All right, so I rambled on enough about this today. If you guys have questions or want to come in and meet with us, if you have questions, the link to get on our calendar is going to be listed below. Keep in mind that track season's coming up, and as a track coach, I'm usually busy in the afternoon, so I have some appointments available, late evenings, 5:30, 6 o'clock p.m., but between 2 and 6 o'clock, I'll probably be at the track unavailable. My business partner has some personal leave coming up. So if you guys want to meet with us, we'll be available in the late evenings. Mornings are always a great option. Otherwise, you may have to wait till after track season. But if you guys have the questions, you can always get on our calendar for that. We also have our new school group, which is only for Washington employees. That's where I prefer people to go for questions. So unless you really need the face-to-face time, if you want to save the costs of our consultation, you can always go in and ask basic questions inside the school group. I have over 60 people in there, all state employees, all with lots of experience. And if they know the answer to the question, I'm sure they'll hop right in and help you out get those answered as well. So we're building the community there. So go ahead and check it out. It's free. I'll put the link in the description below. And until next time, remember that your future depends what you do today. All right, before I sign off, just a real quick legal disclosure that we're required to say as licensed fiduciary advisors. So remember that this is a podcast. It is designed for educational and entertainment purposes only. I don't know you personally, therefore I cannot give you any personal advice. So please don't take anything that we say on the show as being personal, financial, legal, or tax advice. If you want that kind of stuff, make sure you seek out a professional so they can help you with the strategies and investments that are right for you. Also, please remember that despite the name of our show, we are in no way associated with Washington State or the Department of Guidance Systems or any other Washington employer. We are a private-owned firm that specializes in working with Washington State employees, which is why we know so much about this stuff. So remember, we don't work for the state in any way, shape, or form, so please don't confuse us as being an official representative of the state. All right, that's it for the legal stuff. I'll catch you guys all next time.